Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and we're going to be going over the influenza issue with cows. So they contracted avian flu. This has been in the news for about 6 days. And actually, this issue goes back more than a year. So, I'll give you my perspective on it. We have the incident with the car at the gate at the FBI field office. And then we have the Damascus bombing that took place. So let's start with the avian flu. But before we go to that, please make sure that you subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 channels on YouTube. Link is in the description of this video and all my videos. I also have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please subscribe to all those channels. So I have 6 channels for you to subscribe for free. Also, if you would like to help support my news coverage, please be a paid Patreon follower. Link is in the description of this video and all my videos. And you can also donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. And you can do that through the links that are on my website. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com on the homepage at the very bottom. With that said, let's begin.
America testing positive for the bird flu. The Department of Agriculture confirms herds in Texas, Kansas, also Michigan have the virus. There are also presumptive positive tests in herds in New Mexico, also Idaho. Right now, there's no risk to humans unless you work directly with an infected animal. Stephanie Haynes has more for us this morning. Stephanie, I keep thinking about all the people buying dairy this week for their breakfast or March Madness watch parties. What does this mean for humans, consumers?
Yeah, well, for consumers, in terms of your health, the risk is really low, and I'll get to that in a second. But the USDA says that this illness originates from migratory birds, and right now they are actually looking into whether it can spread from cattle to cattle, specifically in Michigan, instead of just coming into contact with those migratory birds. And we just learned that also a domestic goat in Minnesota has also tested positive for this illness. And that's the first time that's ever been in a domestic livestock, according to North Dakota State University. This illness is called highly pathogenic avian influenza. It's been found in wild birds such as pigeons, blackbirds, grackle. The illness has historically been discovered in poultry flocks, some mammals, and even goats, as I said before, according to the USDA, and they were likely infected, Marky, by consuming or coming into contact with these infected birds. And while the flu is fatal among certain poultry flocks, USDA says certain cattle that have been quarantined, kept away from others and have recovered is a good sign. So they are not dying from this quite.
So keep in mind when they say pathogenic, highly pathogenic, influenza, right, or avian flu, right? This is within the avian species, all right? And there are people out there that will spin that and make it seem as though it's pathogenic, highly pathogenic within mammals and then within humans. It's not, all right? Let me be very clear here, all right? It's H5N1, it's H5N1, all right? And what you have to think here is that it's within the bird population where most of the problem is. Now, if species eat these birds that are infected or are in contact with these birds that are infected, they may get avian flu, this H5N1, all right? But it doesn't spread too fast within the herd, within the cattle herd, all right? If at all, all right? So the R naught value within the herd, once a mammal gets avian flu, all right, that R naught value is either 0 or very low, like 0.1 or 0.2, all right? maybe 0.3, right? So this for it to it would stay in the herd very quickly, and it's not um, uh, as lethal within the herd population as it is in the avian population. All right, for the cattle. Now, I don't know about the goats, this is new. Now, why is it in different states? Because the birds fly, and we're going into the spring season. So you're going to see this more often now because the cattle and the herds are out in the field. So, and if you roll back to about a year ago, we had incidences where cattle was contracting avian flu. Now, what's different with this story is that one of the cattle ranchers or the dairy ranchers contracted this from the cow. But again, there is no pathogenic spread shown with humans. So this is a kind of like a nothing burger. But we're going to hear people saying that it is something, really catastrophic. It's not. If it was H7N9, my tune would be totally different. This is H5N1. It doesn't seem to be related to a hybrid with beta corona. And so it's not the fourth cocktail. All right. This seems to be zoonotic. All right. Not every pathogenic situation that happens with microbes is nefarious, and that there are situations where you'll have a zoonotic situation. The crisis that we had in 2020 was not. That had the hands of man in it. And I've gone through hundreds of videos and over 1,000 hours explaining that. All right. In addition, what will happen is that through fear, the dairy supply and potentially the cattle supply may be disrupted because of wasting of the dairy product and potentially calling the herds. Now, there's no evidence that needs to happen. All right. But if enough fear is drummed up in the media, that's what's going to happen to the livestock and the milk supply. So we might, in the short term, see prices go up for meat and dairy products, especially in milk. So that's a negative externality that's coming from this story. But my take on this, and believe me, I know the subject matter pretty well. All right. My take on this is that it's zoonotic. This goes all the way back to about a year ago, where the avian flu was penetrating livestock. All right, cattle, and that it's spread because of migratory birds to different states, and it's not. This would be expected during. You're getting into a better weather season now. We're getting into the spring, right? And you're going to have these incidences that potentially happen. All right. The two viruses that are the most surveilled in the United States, maybe even in the world, but at least in the United States, the two most surveilled viruses are influenza and HIV. So it's so easy that once you get a sample and you start sequencing it and you compare, where are the mutations, you would know very quickly what, if this could be problematic or not. This is not problematic. This is a zoonotic thing that is going to flare up within the livestock and die down. The problem is, as a precautionary measure, there may be some farms where the livestock is culled. I'm not sure if it'll get to that point, but there's a potentiality for it. And then obviously, because it can be passed in the dairy product, then they're going to have to waste the milk. All right, now, if you had milk from a cow that was infected, would it transmit something to you? Most likely not, because of the pasteurization. But it doesn't mean that it would kill all of the virus. Most likely the pasteurization would kill most of the virus. But when you're talking about, thousands or hundreds of thousands of gallons of milk, there may be some particles that are not. Now, would that transmit as an infection to humans? Most likely not. But as a precaution, they're probably going to waste the milk from these farms. Now, are there going to be enough farms that causes a disruption in the supply? Maybe, at least short term, in some locations. All right, so because these are commodities, there might be some behavioral dynamics for the price. All right, so I suspect in the short term that there may be some issues with supply and pricing of these types of commodities. All right, but in terms of, should you be fearful of your life because of H5N1 in cows or in goats in Kansas, in Kansas, Texas, and Michigan, and potentially Nevada and I think it was Idaho or whatever? I would say no. This is a zoonotic thing where there's a little bit of a jump between avian, H5N1, to cattle, and potentially even goats, and that there was at least one rancher that contracted, or I think they call them panhandlers in the dairy industry, that contracted H5N1. There's no evidence that this version of H5N1 is spreading from human to human to human to human. All right, so don't get nervous about this. If you start hearing the news about H7N9, then I would be a little bit more worried about it. All right, but this version of H5N1, no. This is a zoonotic thing. It wasn't done on purpose by some sort of, through some sort of bioweapon. This is zoonotic, and this is going to die out. It's not going to, you're going to hear it in the news. People are going to get scared because you're going to hear a lot of people saying stuff that they don't understand. But this situation is zoonotic, not a nefarious situation. All right? So keep this in mind.
Yet. In the meantime, officials are working with local ranchers, farmers, veterinarians to identify and remove the sick cows from the areas where they are. For humans, USDA says there's no concern about the safety of our milk supply because products are pasteurized before they reach the commercial market space. And of course, the FDA has long said that humans should not consume raw milk because of all the potential health hazards with it.
This is not a food safety issue in the slightest. Those cows usually are not put into the bulk tank for sale into the food supply. That milk is diverted. Even if it does end up into the bulk tank, the food supply milk, all the milk in grocery stores is pasteurized.
True. But in terms of volume, it's not necessarily true that you kill all the virus. All right? There's the issue. But that doesn't mean that you're going to contract it. See, there's a difference between drinking avian flu in a very, very small potential active concentration and actually getting it. Because you got to remember, in this avian flu, the receptor is in the lower part of your lung, not in your intestinal tract. So if you drink it, it's going to just pass through. So yes, pasteurization is going to kill 99.9% of it, right? But because you're doing it in batches, large batches, it's very possible that something is not killed. All right. But even if you drink it and some of these particles are not killed off, all right, through the pasteurization, which most are, but even if something gets through, most likely it's at such a low concentration that you won't get infected, all right, unless you actually inhale your milk. When I guess you could inhale your milk if you look at kids the way they eat, but it's such a low probability. I wouldn't worry about it. But if you are listening to the news and they just say all of it is going to be killed off, no, I don't believe that for a second, because of the size of the batches that are being pasteurized.
Thing USDA says is that milk prices shouldn't be impacted either, and it's too early to tell if the milk supply in general has been affected by this flu. But typically it's this time of year when the milk supply is way up, Marky, just because it's spring and that's sort of the season. Marky.
Yeah, really good to know. Stephanie Haynes, thank you so much. We'll keep our eye.
So is DrPaulCottrell going to stop drinking milk? No. Am I worried about it? No. Zoonotic. It's going to be in the news for a little while. It's going to get isolated. These cows are going to be either treated or culled, and and it'll go back to normal. This is not new. This is not new, because you roll back the YouTube to 1 year ago, and you'll hear stories that were going on a year ago of avian flu affecting cows. All right. What is new is that you have one incident that up to as I'm recording this on April 1st, 8:30 p.m. All right. The understanding is there's only one person that has contracted this version of avian flu. Now there's other people that have contracted avian flu, right? And the people that were working on the farm, and it was small number of people being getting infected, all right, in different areas of the world or different areas of the country outside of this incident. This is going to just die down and everything will go back to normal. This is not a bioweapon. This is not a forced kind of incident, not a leaked incident or anything like that. Because believe me, trust me on this, all right? What they have in the laboratory is a lot more dangerous for H5N1 than what is floating around with the cows, all right? And they know what this is because they've sequenced it. They've isolated it. So you take a sample from the cows, you take the sample from the milk, and you do your genomic sequencing, and you compare to what is what's been data banked and what's in the laboratories, and what we have. It is a lower version of the crazy stuff that they're doing in the laboratory. Now that doesn't mean that H5N1, because not all H5N1 are the same. All right. There are dangerous H5N1s in the laboratory, but this particular incident is a zoonotic incident. And this is the reason why the truthers need to be careful. And people that are covering this subject matter need to be careful. All right. Not all dots connect. Not all incidences are nefarious. Some are just random things that happen in nature, like this one. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean that another H5N1 incident several months from now, 2 weeks from now, that's more virulent, isn't released. It might be, but this incident is not. And that's what's important to keep in mind. Be careful, just stick with the facts, and we'll be able to navigate through this. I personally think that there will be some sort of negative perturbation to the price of milk in local areas, probably in some areas of Texas, some areas of Michigan, some areas in Kansas. All right. But I don't think this is going to be a major disruption in the United States. All right. And there's probably going to be isolation and perhaps even culling of some cattle. This seems to be isolated incidences within certain farms. But keep in mind, you have birds flying around the United States and, with close proximity on a regular basis with cattle or livestock, you're going to have these kinds of incidences. This is not the first time this has happened, nor will it be the last time it happens. It is a natural phenomenon. All right. It is not something that is nefarious. Now, natural phenomena can emerge slowly to something really bad, but there is no indication that you're going to have some sort of highly pathogenicity within human to humans with H5N1 with this particular strain. So just for the ones that are paying attention to this story, just be discerning. It's not something to worry about. If I tell you to start worrying about something, you start worrying about it. All right. I play it pretty in the middle. There's too many people out there that everything is some sort of done by some nefarious actor or some nefarious group of people or whatever. That's not the case with this. So it's not the fourth cocktail, and it's not supercharged H5N1. It's zoonotic H5N1. And that's a good thing. Just view it as a blessing, not a curse. So, okay, so let's finish the video
for this story. Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.
All right, so now I also had another video that I wanted to capture that story. This one right here.
Spell number 1. Your word is loewe.
It sounds French. Is it French?
It's not French.
Are you hitting on me?
No one.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture has confirmed the mystery disease is bird flu. So far, 3 Texas Panhandle dairies have tested positive. Scientists tell me this is the first instance of bird flu being seen in cattle and was likely transferred by infected birds flying from dairy to dairy.
This was 5 days ago. All right, so you have 1 year ago they had an issue like this, and then 5 to 6 days ago there were cows that were getting sick and they didn't know why. They find out, right? They do some testing and they find out they have H5N1.
We had no idea what was going on.
Dairy cows across the Panhandle have been struck by an unexpected illness.
Cattle that were producing between 80 and 90 pounds of milk per day we're dropping down below 20 pounds of milk per day.
Through testing, the mystery illness has been identified as bird flu. Dr. Matt Garner, a beef and dairy scientist in Amarillo, tells me consumers should not shy away from the dairy section.
All milk that we eat, that we buy and consume at the grocery store is pasteurized. And so pasteurization has really been vetted and designed to destroy these types of viruses.
Producers, however, are already feeling the effects as milk production is dropping.
Putting milk down the drain and it's losing milk from production in cows that should be kind of holding the herd and really be in the heart of that milk check every week.
Area veterinary programs like WT and Texas Tech have played a vital role.
It's the practitioners that are in charge of the health of these animals are the ones that kind of raise the red flag, and sending out the call for help.
Experts tell me this is a new and emerging virus. Many samples are still being collected, and agencies continue to fully understand the virus.
Okay, so you have a year ago, this incident, you don't believe me, just take a look at YouTube, you can find it. And, something that happened about 6 days ago, all right? They didn't know what it was. Eventually they do some testing. They find out it's avian flu. Actually, it's H5N1, all right? It's not supercharged H5N1 that's in the laboratories. This is a lower version of it, all right? And this is the thing that is floating around naturally. So don't worry about it. Now, recently, there's been one person, to my knowledge, that contracted it because they were handling the cows, all right? But there's no evidence of this incident spreading human to human, okay? So don't worry about it. Now, I disagree with him that all pasteurization 100% kills pathogens, especially in large quantities. Now, what I didn't know that this video mentioned was that if a cow, and it makes total sense, if a cow is sick, it's going to produce less milk. So the probability that you have milk in the system that is infected is low, on top of pasteurization that kills off anything that might be in the system. But just keep in mind, if someone says pasteurization kills everything, that's bullshit, especially in large quantities, all right? Just keep that in mind. There is no such thing as 100%. They can make it very close, and the larger the batch, the more chance of something, not fully being neutralized, all right? But if milk production goes down radically when a cow is sick, the chances of that milk being in the system is much less, on top of it being pasteurized. So the chances of a glass of milk being, some sort of H5N1 and you drink it, all right, is low. And even if with that low probability, which is possible, but very, very low probability of you drinking that, the chances of you getting sick from it because you're not breathing in your milk, you're probably going to just pass it through your intestinal tract. Because the receptors for the avian flu is actually in your lung, all right? All right, so we handled avian flu, this version of H5N1, don't worry about it. It is not the fourth cocktail, all right? Not. And it's not supercharged H5N1 from the laboratories. All right. Next. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go over I wanted to go over the airstrike dealing with Israel and Iran.
Do you really want to make your holiday special? Tanzania has got so much to offer. From the famous Serengeti National Park, Ngorongoro
We are tracking breaking news out of the Middle East, an attack on Iran's consular building in Syria. Iran's ambassador was not hurt, but he told reporters in Damascus at least 5 people were killed and blamed Israeli warplanes for the strike. Now, CNN cannot independently verify those claims. Our Nick Robertson, though, is here and is following all the breaking news story on this. And Nick, this is a significant target. What more are you learning about this attack?
Well, the ambassador says he was an eyewitness to it because the embassy is right next to the consular building. The consular building destroyed. He says at least 5 people were killed. One of them, according to Iranian state media, was Brigadier General Mohammad Reza Zahidi, who is a very, very senior IRGC top military commander. He's commanded the IRGC Army ground forces before, air forces before, and it is believed at this time that he is the most senior IRGC figure to be killed since the Quds Force commander Qasem Soleimani was killed by the United States in a drone strike early 2020. Take that with the fact that this was a diplomatic building that was hit. That hasn't happened before. Now, the ambassador, Syrian media, Iranian media are blaming Israel, typically in these situations, because there have been situations like this before, where Israel has been blamed and has actually accepted responsibility for some strikes against Iranian targets inside of Syria. Typically, the Israeli government at the moment is saying that we don't comment on what foreign media say, the Iranians and the Syrian media. So this is a sort of a statement that we can expect Israel to give, but the indications are that this would be a target of high value to Israel. And the ambassador said that it was, as you mentioned, Israeli fighter jet F-35 that fired those 6 missiles.
I mean, broaden this out then. If it is Israel, and we don't know at this stage, if it is Israel, the implications here for a region that already is, on the edge, what will this mean? How will Iran, how will Iran react to this?
To set the scene from Israel's side for a moment, they've been talking about the northern border, their northern border, the southern border of Lebanon, as being a place that needs a diplomatic solution in their tensions with Hezbollah that's a proxy of Iran. And they've been saying that window of opportunity has been closing. And they've been saying that the window of opportunity is going to be closing soon. And the discussion has been about mid-April. So Israel at the moment is really on the front foot in terms of wanting to have powerful strikes against Hezbollah. If they are responsible for this strike on such a significant Iranian target, and the ambassador said that there would be a decisive response, the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman, according to Iranian media, is saying that they have a right to take a response. The Iranian foreign minister is saying the international community should do something. This potentially stokes up the tensions between Iran and Israel. And in that context,
this is why you come to my channel, to get a different perspective. I said, once this thing was starting, once October 7th happened, that Israel is going to need to knock out Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. Now, we know that Iran funds Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. All right. The only leader in Israel that is willing to go toe-to-toe with Iran is Netanyahu. If Netanyahu is pushed out of office through some sort of electoral process, then what will happen is that the window of opportunity for stability and ending the never-ending terrorism that's in the Middle East, that window of opportunity will diminish radically. And there probably won't be a leader with, no matter if you like Netanyahu or not, he's probably the only leader in the last probably 15 years, maybe 20 years, where has the balls to actually go toe-to-toe with Iran. All right? Now, 20 years ago, there wasn't this red heifer thing. And like I keep on saying, the biblical boundaries of Israel means the Sinai Peninsula, the West Bank, parts of Jordan, parts of Lebanon, parts of Syria, and then all of Jerusalem. That means that if a two-state solution can be agreed upon, that means that the Palestinians go into Gaza, and that's Palestine, not the West Bank and not Jerusalem. And this is going to usher in the taking down of the Dome of the Rock and the rebuilding of the temple. Now, 2 decades ago, there weren't red heifers. There has only been 9 red heifers since Moses. Since Moses, on the mountain, all right? There are now 3 red heifers. Now, they have to be sacrificed soon. Because if there's 2 hairs, more than 2 hairs that aren't red, then the red heifers are no longer kosher for slaughter. And you lose the chance of the ash from the burning of the red heifer to be used to purify the Jewish people and to help to purify some of the items that go into the temple. All right. So Israel is going to have to, the Jewish people are going to have to sacrifice these 3 animals soon before they are no longer valid for sacrifice. Now, do you think that the Jewish people, do you really think that Israel is gonna say, okay, well, let's look at the geopolitical environment, maybe 2,000-3,000 years from now, because you got to remember, a red heifer hasn't been around since the fall of the temple. All right, so let's for the last 2,000 years or whatever, we haven't had a red heifer, and that's been kosher enough throughout its whole observational period to sacrifice. You think they're going to take that risk and not do it and wait another 2,000 years? I mean, come on. But when this is happening, when this does happen, it will happen as long as those animals stay kosher. It has to happen this year. Now, I'm not sure when they were born. It seems to me that they have to happen before Rosh Hashanah. All right, Rosh Hashanah is in October, beginning of October. I think it's like October 3rd or 3rd, I think it is, in Israel. So there's 2 days, and outside of Israel, it's 1 day in Israel. So I think it's October 3rd. So I think it has to happen before then. Now, I think it also depends on when they were born. And there's 3 of them, and they probably weren't all born at the same time. So there may be some that have to be sacrificed before, without knowing the dates of when they were born. Maybe 1 or 2 are sacrificed before Rosh Hashanah, and then, maybe the last one is sacrificed after Rosh Hashanah. I don't know, depending on when they were born. Now, people were saying, oh, it was definitely going to be sacrificed like immediately because, there's a Jewish tradition during the Sabbath, last Sabbath, that you read a certain section of the Torah that talks about the red heifer. It's actually Numbers, the 19th chapter, verse 1. All right. We're in Leviticus in the reading of the Torah. So we're not at Numbers, but there are certain periods of time where on the Sabbath, you read certain sections. So you read your normal section of the Torah, which was Leviticus the Parsha was in Leviticus. So you read that, and then there's what is called a mafter. And that mafter was this one section of that dealt with the red heifer, all right, which is done every year, all right. You read about it, and all right, and then there's the chapter 19 of Numbers, 19 verse 1, all right. So go to your Bible and go read it, all right. That was read last Shabbos, all right, last Saturday. It will be reread once that parsha in Numbers aligns to the Sabbath. All right. I don't know how many, it's probably 2 months away or whatever. Okay. Maybe a little bit more. But there was a Mafta reading, and that was that time in the period before Passover where this section is read. A lot of people are saying, oh, it was going to be sacrificed then. Didn't happen. All right. So there's a period of time, there's some logic to say that it has to be done before Passover. All right, Passover starts on the 22nd of this year, of April. All right, and where did I say Jacob's strength is in April? So if Kabbalistically you want to align with Jacob's strength, you need to sacrifice soon. And it makes sense to do it before Passover. Why? Because there is a tradition that Elijah is supposed to come back and inform the population that the Messianic age is coming. All right. Now, I did a very broad brush of that. There's a lot of nuance to this whole Elijah thing. But so it kind of makes sense to do it right before Passover because of the strength of Jacob with the soul root. There's another line of thought that you do it when Jacob is less strong. So by doing the sacrifice, it's weakening the strength of Esau. Both interpretations might be right. All right. So if the latter interpretation, then that would mean that it has to be done just before Rosh Hashanah. All right, Rosh Hashanah is October 3rd. October is when the strength of Esau is at its zenith. So somewhere maybe at the end of September could be when it's done. But if you push it that far, you're increasing the chances of at least one of those animals to be not viable for the sacrifice. Because if more than two hairs aren't red, they can't do it. All right. So they're going to take it to the absolute minimum and then sacrifice that animal. Now, maybe this thing goes into a stage. Maybe one gets sacrificed right before Passover. Maybe another one gets sacrificed right before Rosh Hashanah. Maybe another one gets sacrificed later down in the year, maybe even all the way into 2025, depending on when they were born. Because we don't know, were they all from the same mother? Were they all born at the same time? I don't know. They could have been, but who knows? But even if they were born at the same time, there may be enough play, because we don't know when they were born exactly. You could stage this. So we might actually see 3 separate burnings, 3 separate slaughterings. Or it could all happen all at once. But play this out, all right? This is where the news doesn't understand. Play this out. It doesn't matter if Israel is bombing Damascus. Once the slaughter happens, they have to take the animal up the ramp and put it on the altar to have it burned. Now, my understanding is, and I'm not a Cohen, but my understanding is once they slaughter it, they take some of the blood and they sprinkle it on the altar. And my understanding is they have to sprinkle it also in the direction of the tabernacle, which probably in this case would be the direction of the Temple Mount. All right. Then they take the animal, the carcass of the animal and the hide of the animal up onto the top of the altar and then burn it. Now, don't you think, now most likely this is all going to be done secretly when they slaughter the animal. But this thing's going to burn for 24 hours or longer. All right. As the night falls, and you see on, I think it's on Mount Olive, all right, but you know, in Jerusalem or just outside of Jerusalem, you'll be able to see this at night as it's burning. Every single news organization is going to have a camera on that flame. Everywhere in the world will see the actual burning of the red heifer. And so when people said in ancient times that the whole world will know, that the messianic age is coming, this is what they're talking about. They're not talking about CNN and smart bombs on Iraq, but it's using the media to spread through all the social media technology that we have now, and this internet that links everybody together. Everyone in the world is actually going to see something that hasn't happened for over 2,000 years. And there's going to be many people in awe. There's going to be many people fearful because they didn't live a proper life. They didn't take, they're not taking the advice of what I've been saying. Take stock of your life and be a better person and position yourself where you're going to get the blessing, not the curse. But when this is starting to take hold and you start to see the flames of the sacrifice, and you see this on every single news organization around the world, and even the small ones like this, and some of the Alex Jones types, and right, and it's also going to be on CNN and MSNBC and Al Jazeera, everywhere. Everyone is going to be covering this. It's going to be the biggest event ever. Way bigger than 9/11. When this happens, there's going to be people that are fearful because they realize deep down inside their soul that they missed the boat, or they're just about to miss the boat. And maybe there's this extra time to be prepared, to get the blessing and not the curse. I don't know if there's going to be enough time for that because I don't know how fast this is all going to unravel. But there's also going to be a big part out there, the Muslim population that knows that it's the countdown of actually the Temple Mount being taken down. Now, it may be taken down in force, or it may be slowly, brick by brick, taken down. I don't know. Probably slowly, brick by brick. Just in terms of the sanctity of the Temple Mount. But they know that burning of the red heifer is the countdown to that Temple Mount being rebuilt and the Dome of the Rock coming down. They know this. They'll freak out. They're going to go. They will go into a gigantic childish hissy fit. But it's a childish hissy fit with weapons. And some of them are unconventional weapons. And this is the reason why it's so important to take out Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran and their military apparatus. Not the people, the military apparatus. When I say take out Iran, I mean the military, not the Iranian people. When I say take out Hezbollah, it's not take out all the people in Syria and Lebanon. And when I say take out Hamas, it doesn't mean take out everyone in Gaza. It's the military apparatus. But keep in mind the Muslim world, which is over 1 billion people, are going to be very, very pissed. And it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle of civilizations. It's going to be the biggest event that you've ever seen in your life. Is the when they are burning those animals, those red heifers, if they burn them, is going to start the countdown to something that the Muslim community cannot stop. And it will be bigger than any event in human history, at least in modern times. Probably the closest thing that mankind has experienced is probably the Exodus, and probably, the journey in the desert for 40 years. But the rebooting of the temple and the start of the countdown with these animals, and you have no organization. I'm willing to bet that you have never, ever heard anybody say this. Not even the rabbis have fully grasped what is coming and how this is all going to unravel in a geopolitical sense. There are many that are afraid, but don't be afraid. This is something that's supposed to happen, right? It's not something that just a small group of people want it to happen or are willing to happen. It's something that is much bigger than us. And it really doesn't matter if you don't want it or if you do want it. It is totally irrelevant what you think or what I think, what anybody thinks. This is something that is going to happen no matter what. The people in the media and the people that are covering the crisis in Israel, most of them aren't smart enough to be able to fully explain to you where this is all going, like I just did.
Israel would anticipate that response could very likely come from Hezbollah. And if it did, then that would give Israel a rationale to strike Hezbollah harder. And this is what the United States fears. This is what European Union officials fear. This is why Secretary of State Antony Blinken is meeting tomorrow.
That's why you have to knock out Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran's capability. And the more effective that is, the less turmoil will happen when that red heifer starts to be burned on the altar. Now, if the Americans are afraid of some sort of strike to a building that's next to an embassy that might get Iran upset, can you imagine how fearful the Pentagon is with 3 little red cows? We have all this fucking technology in the United States. Trillions of dollars. Trillions. Measured in huge percentages of our GDP, annual GDP. And if you add in all of the spending since World War II, it's much more than 20 or 30% of our GDP. All right. Trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, and that is just what is accounted for. We're not talking about the black operations that no one knows where the money went. All right. And they're afraid of 3 little red cows. Wake up, guys. Wake up.
With the French president in Paris, and they will discuss this issue of Lebanon, Israel, Syria, Iran. It's in this context. The tensions on it are very, very high right now.
Yeah, the risk of escalation here clearly very high. And this is something, like you said, that Secretary Blinken has been going to the region. I don't know how, trip number 5, 6, I can't remember, trying to keep a lid.
So use in your brain, do a mental experiment. if you don't knock out Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran's military capability, and the red heifers have to be burned at a certain time, within a time frame where they're not kosher, don't you think that the fight in the Middle East will be much worse? The red heifers are going to get burned. All right. Don't you think that not knocking out the military capability of this evil axis would make things worse? So don't you think that it makes a lot of sense to knock it out? So the uproar in the Middle East will be at least manageable when the red heifers are burned. See, again, like I said, we're sort of in control, even though it doesn't matter, what we think in terms of, do we want the red heifers to be burned? Do we want the Temple Mount to be rebuilt or whatever? The Dome of the Rock is coming down. The Temple Mount is being rebuilt. The size of Israel is getting it back to the biblical times. Now, do we want to do this peacefully, surgically, or do we want it to be more bloody? It's up to us. But I do know this. You're not knocking out Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran. It's going to be a lot bloodier. So now you can start to see how this is all unraveling and how we are not in control of this. We think we are in control. We are not in control of this. You think you're going to be able to diffuse it? No.
So we're looking, what is the US saying at this juncture then?
I haven't heard what they've said so far, and it's not clear. If Israel was to take responsibility for it, then I think we could expect to hear something publicly from the United States. If you go back to just after Christmas, there was a senior IRGC figure, not anywhere near as senior as this one, an advisor to Syrian forces, who was killed by a strike in and around Damascus just after Christmas. Again, Israel at that time said they weren't responsible, but later on Israeli officials admitted that they were responsible for that strike. The United States is trying its best to de-escalate those tensions. It wants the ceasefire in Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel's got 100,000 people who can't go home along the northern border because it's too dangerous, because of the escalation in tensions. And there is some in the military and political establishment in Israel who believe that this is a necessary time to take out Hezbollah's military capability. So it's coming. Is this a spark to set off the tinderbox? Everything we've seen so far, Israel has calculated, and I was just looking at an interview I did with a former head of Israeli military intelligence a few months ago, and he said, so far, everything Israel has done has been within a red line, not to cause Iran to escalate, because Iran knows it has a lot at stake at the moment. Is this another calculation by Israel, taking it right to the wire? We don't know. And what is Iran's response going to be? It was a very big response when Qasem Soleimani was killed.
Let's start with a conversation about the breaking news. We led the hour with the apparent strike
Not sure
on
why
the Iranian
CNN
consulate building in
edited
Damascus,
like this.
Syria. The Iranian ambassador pointing the finger at Israel. Israel says it doesn't comment on foreign media reports. What do you make of the attack and the likelihood that this was potentially the IDF?
Well, it seems that's.
My name is Katerina. I'm action field coordinator in Odessa.
I'm Vladimir, team leader, Rapid Disposal Team, Kharkiv, Ukraine.
Well, it seems that's the highest likelihood that it was the IDF, not a certainty. It's a fascinating and in some ways risky move. You're going to now bet about how the Iranians will respond. The Israelis, until now, have taken the position that they will go after Iranian commanders or anyone else who they believe are masterminds behind the attacks on Israelis from Lebanon and all that. But the problem is here that they are still deeply engaged in Gaza, and the whole effort has been to keep this war from spreading to the north. And this may well give the Iranians an excuse to do that. Until now, as you've heard from Natasha Bertrand, we've seen something of a calming down. And this could undo all of that and inflame the situation pretty quickly.
David, put that into context for us in the prism of where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is right now, because he is at a point of vulnerability as we've watched these protests escalate over recent days, and especially into the weekend, as we saw with Melissa Bell, with tents being set up outside the Israeli parliament. What is the significance of the timing here?
Well, there are two possibilities that come immediately to mind. One is the timing was merely a military moment of opportunity, where they knew where these commanders were and they had an open shot at them, and one where they thought they might be able to minimize civilian casualties, although right now we don't know what those casualties may have been. The other is that Prime Minister Netanyahu sees the risk of an expanded war as politically beneficial potentially to him, that his entire reason for staying in office has been to defend Israel in the wake of the October 7 attacks. And of course, the American concern is that he has done this in the hardest possible way, in a way that has cost at least 30,000 lives so far. And those protests that you saw marked sort of the end of that period of grace that Netanyahu.
Hamas embedded themselves in the population. Hamas needs to be killed. They know the only way to get the international sympathy is to try to create a situation where they maximize the potentiality of collateral damage. The Israelis are going to fucking kill Hamas, independent if there are going to be people, around. All right, they're going to try to minimize the damage. But the problem here is that Hamas is embedding themselves within the population, which is a war crime. But no one talks about that. See, we're moving towards nuclear war, guys. But the answer isn't, stop the nuclear war. All right? What's going to happen here is that there's going to be ushering in a messianic age to stop this crap, because mankind can't do it themselves. Stupid. These people, all of these international experts or journalists that are covering this on a daily basis, they're all fucking idiots. They're all fucking idiots.
Where the Israelis sort of took the view that even if he was not their preferred leader, he was their wartime leader. And you're now seeing that fracture. He may see some benefit in the war revving up.
Netanyahu has to knock out Iran. Absolutely. All right, let's see here. Now, all right, so we have that. Now I want to play Al Jazeera on this issue. That was CNN.
Imagine rising above the clouds to the edge of space, looking down on Earth in the comfort of a luxury space balloon. Sounds like a sci-fi movie, right? It's not. This ambitious company is...
We begin with a rapidly developing story out of Syria. Iranian state media is reporting that an Israeli airstrike has targeted the Iranian embassy compound in Damascus. Several diplomats were reportedly killed in the attack. Reuters news agency says a senior commander of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, Mohammad Reza Zahebi, is among the dead. Let's bring in our correspondent, Zaina Hoda. She's joining us live from Beirut, and this has just happened in the last few hours, Zaina. But what are you hearing? What more are you hearing about the attack and any reaction to it?
This is very much a developing story. Like you mentioned, Syrian state television, as well as Iranian media, are reporting that the Iranian consulate was the target of an apparent Israeli strike in the heart of Damascus. Videos from the Syrian capital show a building right next to the consulate completely destroyed. And you do see as well an Iranian flag. So this in itself is very significant and could have serious implications, targeting a diplomatic mission which is supposed to be protected under international law. Now, Iranian state television is saying that diplomats were killed in that strike, but security sources have been quoted as saying that a top-ranking Quds Force commander, an Iranian commander in the Revolutionary Guards, Mohammad Reza Zahedi, was killed in that strike. He won't be the first Iranian commander or
killing a commander that is funding, supplying, helping terrorists like Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis is a good thing. And because of that, on PNN, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and celebrate killing this fucker. Because it's people like him that actually have been knocking down our drones and hitting our bases and hitting our ships. It's time to act. It's time to stop worrying about what the Muslims are going to think. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver, max 14 or max 35. You take a teaspoon of it a day, you swish it in your mouth, you gargle, you swallow it, and it'll neutralize pathogens. You know, the bad guys. It'll neutralize the bad guys that try to make you sick. Just like what Israel did in knocking out the bad guys today. All right? It was a good day, knocking out the bad guys. So you want good days, right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the max 35 or the max 14 or the silver solution. Take a teaspoon of it a day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day. Because sometimes if you're not feeling well, you know, maybe you need not just one missile strike on a terrorist. Maybe you need two. Maybe you need three. Take the structural nanosilver and neutralize those pathogens. Also go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Link is in the description of this video, and get the ashwagandha root. Why? Because it brings down your blood glucose levels. That's a good thing because it brings down that inflammation to prevent cardiovascular disease. And by bringing down inflammation, you're going to help with your immune system. All right. Now, there are some people that are hypoglycemic, low blood glucose. Don't take ashwagandha then. Most people in the United States have hyperglycemia, so they have more glucose than they need. And this is going to help you. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get ashwagandha. Resveratrol, really important as an antioxidant, and it helps to get rid of senescent cells. It's part of an anti-aging protocol. It's synergistic with C60. Probiotic, really important to get that proper gut biome. I have it in a capsule form and I also have it in a powder form. This one's a powder. You mix it with your food. I take it in mid-afternoon, and you'll notice that your metabolism is better, and you're going to get a better communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. So please go to the store and get the probiotic. Clarity factor, really important, so you don't have brain fog. Take it every day. It'll reduce the brain fog, and it'll get those dendrites firing. And by getting those dendrites firing, you'll have better mental acuity. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the clarity factor. And since terrorists always give you stress, to bring down that stress, to bring down those pro-inflammatory cytokines, take turmeric. Because what will happen, this is a very good antioxidant, but if you take this on a regular basis, you're bringing down those pro-inflammatory cytokines, bring down that inflammation, and you're slowing down the aging process, and you're boosting up your immune system because it's not chronically being needed. So this is part of the anti-aging protocol. What's in the core of the anti-aging protocol? Structural nanosilver liquid like max 35 or max 14. The second part is taking ashwagandha with turmeric, which will bring down that inflammation, and then C60, which is a very strong antioxidant, which I'll talk about later. Let's go back to Al Jazeera, because Al Jazeera will increase your pro-inflammatory cytokines. So make sure you go to my store and take turmeric to bring down those pro-inflammatory cytokines before you watch Al Jazeera.
To have been killed in recent months. Israel has carried out numerous assassinations in recent months, targeting Iranian commanders as well as those commanders allied with Iran. But no doubt the location, the fact that the Syrian state media and Iranian media are saying that a diplomatic mission was targeted, there is still no reaction really there's still no confirmation, if you like, from Iran on whether or not Mohammad Reza Zahedi was killed. But this is definitely another blow for Iran in recent months.
Absolutely, Zaina. And as you've been saying, and as we've been reporting for certainly since the war on Gaza began, but for years before that, the Israeli government and military have carried out assassinations, have killed senior members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. But have they ever carried out an attack such as this on an embassy building?
This is what is significant about this strike, and this is why it could have serious implications. It really crosses red lines. Now, how will...
My understanding is it's a building next to the embassy. Maybe it is an embassy building, but my understanding is it's a building next to the embassy.
Iran react. Many have said that Israel has been acting with little restraint, crossing red lines, because Iran's response has been restraint, whether it's Iran or whether it's allies in the region. You mentioned that Israel has been hitting Iranian and Iranian-linked targets in Syria for years now, preventing them from entrenching themselves militarily. But since October, since the war on Gaza, and since the group's part of the network of the so-called Axis of Resistance, which is led by Iran, opened fronts against Israeli forces to help Palestinians in Gaza, then we've seen an uptick of Israeli strikes in Syria, going after commanders, warehouses, really trying to degrade their operational capabilities. And when you take out commanders, like if indeed...
Now think about what the Palestinians in the Muslim community at large, and even the people that aren't Muslim, but are ultra-liberal, supporting the Hamas, right? They're all saying, oh, Israel, you're so bad. You're causing all this damage. The proportionality of destruction isn't equal, and blah, blah, blah. Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran took a gamble, and they lost the poker game. And now what they want is people to feel sorry for them because they took a risk and they lost. And they're shocked that they're getting their ass kicked. And they're going to continue to get their ass kicked until the job is done. Now just keep that in mind, ultra-liberal, that you're supporting Hamas, or you're supporting this concept that, the Palestinians are all lily white and that the Israelis are wrong on this. It doesn't matter what the Jews think, and it doesn't matter what the Muslims think. It doesn't even matter what the conservative neocons think in the United States, or even the ultra-liberals. The Temple Mount is being rebuilt. We don't have a say in this. The only thing is it going to be bloody or is it going to be under a peaceful transition? That's what's in our power, but it's going to happen anyways. And so the crybabies, Hamas, took a gamble, and now they lost everything, and they're hoping that the international community will come in and save them. And the international community should not come back and save them, because they made this happen. Now, would you take a bet? You know, can you go to Las Vegas, bet your farm at the poker table, and you lose everything, and then you start pounding the table and crying and all this stuff, and knocking down things and breaking stuff in the casino? You think the casino manager should say, okay, we'll give you everything back? You took a chance and you lost it, but that's not your fault. They should have never played the game they played on October 7th. It's their fault. They lost. And now there's ramifications.
Mohammed Reza Zahadi, then what you're doing is you're taking out liaison officers, the people who link all these groups together. Now, if you talk to anybody in Israel, what they will say is that they believe that Iran uses its diplomatic missions, whether in Beirut, whether in Damascus or elsewhere, for meetings, for planning meetings. They use it as some sort of a headquarters. So they, in one way or another, are trying to justify, targeting this building. But no doubt, this is a serious development. There's already tensions across the region, triggered by the war on Gaza. How will Iran react? If it does not react, then there will be no deterrence. And this could continue. And Israel will feel that it is able to take out, whether commanders in Syria or in Lebanon. Just yesterday, there was another targeted assassination in the south of the country. A member of Hezbollah killed in that strike in southern Lebanon.
That's right, Zaina. And just as you're saying, one of the biggest questions now is how is Iran going to respond? They have said many times.
Why does she need to be right in the middle of the street with all the cars?
Since the war on Gaza began, and while members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps have been killed, that they will respond. Just how difficult a position does this massive escalation put Iran in, and how much more dangerous does this make the entire conflict spilling over Gaza's borders and into the region?
Well, no doubt, if they do not react and do not respond, then there will be no deterrence, and Israel will continue to carry out these targeted assassinations. But there are very difficult choices here. Let me give you just one example. The front, the South Lebanon, Northern Israel front. Hezbollah opened a front to help Palestinians in Gaza. It is targeting military positions of the Israeli army in the north of the country. It feels that it is putting a lot of pressure on the government because tens of thousands of people were forced to leave their homes in northern Israel. So this is added pressure on the Israeli government. Now, but if Hezbollah were to fire rockets, and it has the capabilities to do so, thousands of rockets on a daily basis, and hit Tel Aviv and hit Haifa, then Israel could also hit Beirut. It could also hit Hezbollah, areas where Hezbollah supporters live, leaving hundreds of thousands of people without homes. So these are very difficult choices, for Hezbollah or for Iran to make, because there's massive destruction on both sides. But again, there is this need for the deterrence in order for these targeted assassinations to stop. What we're seeing really is an uptick in Israeli strikes in Syria becoming more frequent. There was a strike yesterday. There was a strike 2 days ago or 3 days ago in Aleppo. More than 50 were killed in Syria. Many of them were Syrian military personnel, and at least 7 of them were members of the Lebanese armed group Hezbollah. So Israel's strategy seems to be to try to degrade and weaken their enemies, whether it is in Syria, whether it is in Lebanon, whether it involves targeting commanders, whether it involves targeting what it says are military assets, warehouses. So this conflict really is on a dangerous and slippery slope, a conflict, regional tensions that have been triggered by the war on Gaza. And as long as that war continues, then the tensions will only escalate. And there will be no way to de-escalate this conflict because, for example, here in Lebanon, Hezbollah has made it clear they will not halt the fighting until the war on Gaza ends.
Zaina, thank you very much for that. That's our correspondent Zaina Hodder joining us live from Beirut with what we know so far. And we're joined now by Ali Vaiz, he's director.
When Barbara switched to TurboTax,
I broke 4 generations of family tradition with 5 little words. Ma, I want to make perfume.
And we're joined now by Ali Vaiz, he's director of the Iran project at the International Crisis Group, and he's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for your time. From what we know so far, what you're hearing so far, what do you make of this attack on a building in the Iranian embassy compound of the Syrian capital, Damascus?
Well, it is possible that this was a response to an attack yesterday on a Israeli naval facility in the city of Eilat by potentially Iranian-backed Iraqi Shia militias. But even if that was the case, this seems to be a disproportionate response because targeting a diplomatic facility is akin to targeting another country on its own soil. And having killed senior commanders there, as well as Iranian diplomats, it seems to be a major provocation.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say when you mentioned the naval facility in Eilat.
It's time to take it to Iran.
Military installation. This is a diplomatic facilities. Our correspondent Zaina was talking about how this conflict is on a dangerous and slippery slope. Just how much more dangerous has this situation become after this latest attack?
Look, overall, this seems to still be a low simmer regional war. It's not yet an all-out regional conflict, but it does appear that Israel is trying to do everything in its power to expand the conflict, or at least there are some elements in Israel who see benefits, political benefits possibly, from expanding and prolonging this conflict by dragging Iran and Hezbollah into it. This is at the same time putting Israel in a really win-win situation because Israel knows Iran doesn't want to get dragged into a regional war. And so if it escalates its attacks against Iranian assets and personnel in Syria, it probably would be cost-free. And if Iran does respond and retaliate, then it becomes a justified pretext for expanding the war.
Yeah, I mean, you say that Israel knows that Iran doesn't want to expand this conflict, but it has to respond, doesn't it? Several members of its Iranian Revolutionary Guard have been killed since the war on Gaza began, and now this attack.
That's right. And we have come a long way from the time that Israel wanted to target Iranian assets in Syria. It would actually give some warning to the Russians so that there will be no Iranian casualties or fatalities. Now we're seeing that not only Israel is almost on a weekly basis targeting Iranian assets, but is actually targeting to kill. And now it has escalated significantly by targeting a diplomatic facility. But look, Iran, again, has plenty of experience with these kind of conflicts. And right now, its strategic interest seems to be in trying to prevent falling into this trap that it believes Israel has laid for it. And so if I wanted to bet, I would bet that a likely Iranian response is going to come through its proxies or its partners in the region. We might see attacks on Israeli vessels in the Red Sea by the Houthis, or we might see resumption of attacks by Shia militias in Iraq and Syria on U.S. Facilities. But it's very unlikely that Iran would respond directly.
You said that in the past that Israel would give warnings, through Russia before carrying out such attacks. on Iranian installations, on Iranian assets in Syria. Why isn't that happening now? And does it have anything to do with the fact that Russia has been very outspoken against Israel's war on Gaza?
Well, Russia's relationship with Israel has suffered since the Gaza war. There's no doubt about it. And there seems to be less deconfliction and coordination between the Israelis and the Russians. But this has more to do with Israel's own interest in trying to use the fog of war in Gaza to weaken Iran and its allies in the region as well. But also, again, this seems to be that the gloves are off right now because Israel believes that in any scenario, whether Iran responds or doesn't respond, Israel stands to gain.
And lastly, Mr. Myers, we've heard a lot from the United States, Israel's biggest ally, of course, about not wanting this conflict to expand. Do you see the United States responding to this latest attack in any way?
Look, the U.S. Position is that if Israel provokes a war with Hezbollah or with Iran, it's on its own. But if Iran and Hezbollah would target Israel in an unprovoked manner, then the U.S. will come into the conflict to support Israel. The question right now is whether this line has been crossed through the recent attack, which again, as I said, constitutes a major provocation.
That's Ali Vyas of the International Crisis Group. Thank you for your time.
All right, now what we're going to do this is another Al Jazeera.
Millions of content creators across the globe. Among the dead is a senior commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Several of the embassy's diplomats have also reportedly been killed in the attack. Iran's foreign minister says the Israeli attack is a breach of all international conventions. Let's bring in our correspondent, Zaina Hoda. She's joining us live from Beirut. And Zaina, Iran saying that a consular annex was attacked by fighter jets. What are you learning about this incident?
Well, no doubt this is a major escalation in regional tensions. Both Syria and Iran are accusing Israel of targeting the Iranian consulate in the heart of the Syrian capital, Damascus.
This is just basically repeating what they just said in the previous one. All right. What was another thing I wanted to play here? This is dealing with protests in Jerusalem, dealing with Netanyahu to resign.
Well, as Netanyahu was speaking on Sunday, thousands were again taking to the streets of Jerusalem and other Israeli cities, calling for his resignation and the release of all hostages in Gaza. Now, the protests are still ongoing. The Israeli Prime Minister met with the family of one of the hostages on Sunday. The father of 19-year-old Nama Levy told Israel's army radio that they left the meeting, quote, disturbed and with no good news. Nadav Salzberger from the Change Generation movement is leading the Tel Aviv protests, and he told the UK's Telegraph newspaper on Sunday that the protests over the weekend were, quote, an eruption of underground currents that have reached the boiling point. And he joins us now live from Jerusalem. Great to see you, Nadav. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Look, over the weekend, we saw an eruption of anti-government protests across many parts of Israel, but your specific movement is calling for something very specific. I want you to take me through what you and your members want.
Thank you. So first of all, I want to start by mentioning the 134 hostages still held captive in Gaza, including women, elderly, and children. We are fighting and praying for their immediate release. We are a movement called the Change Generation, After October 7th, we realized that Netanyahu and his coalition have no intent of taking responsibility over the worst disaster in Israel's history. So we have taken to the streets and we formed a young movement comprised of young Israelis, reservists, and students with the goal of replacing the current government with a responsible government, one deserving of the Israeli people. That is our goal.
So you're calling for elections and a change in governments, essentially?
Yes. Yeah, we're calling for election.
Over and above, of course, importantly, and the release of hostages, which is important. But you've also said something interesting, and just reading up about what your movement is about, that Netanyahu hasn't prioritized hostages. So what do you think he has prioritized instead?
I think that
The Great Gatsby has just roared onto Broadway. Jeremy Jordan and Eva Noblezada star in this lush, bewitching, and
I think that Netanyahu has prioritized the survival of his own political survival and the survival of his coalition. I think that while many people, including politicians, are doing their best to try and bring back the hostages, it simply isn't enough. I think that we, as the young generation who grew up under Netanyahu, have witnessed rotten leadership, and it's time for us to step up and demand better leadership for all Israelis.
So Netanyahu has rejected calls for elections, saying that it's going to dismantle the talks that are currently underway, specifically for hostage release. We also know that Hamas has said that all hostages will be released if there's a sustained ceasefire. So what are your views on the current negotiations, and importantly, on a ceasefire?
We believe that the war against Hamas is a just war. We believe that Hamas is a threat not only to Israelis, but also to Palestinians, and that Israel must triumph over Hamas. That is why we are not calling for a ceasefire. We believe that the war needs to be fought until the end, but we also believe that we should prioritize bringing back the hostages, even if it means pausing the same way we paused a couple of months ago to bring back hostages.
This is why I'm saying that people are getting cursed and blessed in this fissure within Israel is causing a curse. Netanyahu is not lily white, but he is the guy to knock out Iran. And for the world, that is far more important.
And we also believe that declaring a schedule for elections a couple of months from now will not hurt or damage neither the war efforts or the efforts to bring back the hostages, but rather allow the current government to act without being dependent on politics or its own survival.
My take on this is that their political wing, or their group that has assembled to try to push out Netanyahu, they want to knock out Hamas, but they don't want to take this any further. Because you got to remember, there are a lot of liberal Jews in Israel that is antithetical to what I've been saying that this is all moving towards. Now, again, it doesn't matter what he thinks or what I think or what you think or what anyone thinks, because it's going to happen. What's in our power, and I keep on saying this, but it doesn't sink in to people, is how bloody it's going to get. Going down this road with what he wants to do will make it more bloody.
Yeah, I mean, and of course, families of hostages, we've heard just harrowing stories of the uncertainty that they're experiencing. I want to turn now to the UN Security Council resolution that within it said that famine is setting in Gaza right now. You know, from what we've been seeing, and Netanyahu's policies essentially of not allowing enough aid into Gaza has gotten a lot of criticism from aid organizations. They're describing dire realities. From your perspective, How are you viewing this? And does this worry you and your members, importantly?
Again, I think
I'm willing to bet that if you take the average person in Gaza and you compare them to the average person in Ethiopia or in some other African country that there's real famine, you're going to see there a big difference. And if there's a big difference and the BMI is higher in Gaza than, let's say, in Ethiopia, then how can it be famine? It may be malnutrition. There may be a shortage of food, but I'm not sure that you would consider that famine.
For our future in Israel, for the future of the region. I think that what we have seen yesterday in Jerusalem are hundreds of thousands of patriots going to the streets and demanding a better future. I think we are done waiting for politicians to make things better. I think that we need to make them better, and that we, the young people in Israel, are the generation that will bring change to the region and to Israel. Yeah, and I think that I know that we plan on continuing our protest.
I'm not so sure that their change is the change of what is supposed to happen. Some of their heart is in the right place, but because there's a liberal bent to it, it's not fully aligned with what's supposed to happen. And there's this problem that's taking place. You know, a group of people that's only about war, they're not fully aligned with what's supposed to happen. If there's a group that's fully aligned with just give peace a chance, like John Lennon, you know, that are not fully aligned with what's supposed to happen. There's a middle ground. And my understanding of what's been going on in Israel with the conservatives versus the liberals is that the liberals have moved away from the religion, have moved away from this concept of following Torah. And that is not aligned with what is happening. What is the countdown, this rebooting of the temple and rebuilding of the Temple Mount and bringing down the Dome of the Rock.
All right, Nadav Salzberger, great to have you on. Thank you for taking the time. CNN is also learning that senior US and Israeli officials will meet virtually today to discuss Israel's proposed ground offensive in Rafah. A US official says the two sides are still working towards an in-person meeting on the issue. Face-to-face talks were abruptly called off last week by the Israeli Prime Minister after Washington refused to block a UN resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu says US pressure will not stop an Israeli ground operation in Rafah.
We will go into Rafah and eliminate Hamas battalions there for one simple reason. There is no victory without entering Rafah, and there is no victory without eliminating Hamas battalions there.
Yep. Very simple.
Right, we'll talk back on, and I want to head to Washington now and bring in CNN's Natasha Bertrand. Natasha, I want to get into what the US has repeatedly said, and it's warned Israel about a siege into Rafah. In this virtual meeting aimed at Netanyahu, do you think that he's going to be able to convince the US that they have a workable plan? Can the US be convinced of a Rafah operation?
Well, the answer is that it really depends, because as of right now, the U.S. is extremely skeptical, and they've been urging Israeli officials, including in talks with the Israeli defense.
U.S. officials only care about the optics. how it's going to affect the Democratic Party in the election, because they need Michigan as the swing state. And if they lose Michigan, they will lose the presidency. That's a big part of it. And the other part is the Pentagon can't win a war. They're afraid. They're afraid. Remember what I was saying? When the red heifers are burned on the altar, when, I'm not sure, but it has to be sometime around this year, right? When that happens, there's going to be a lot of people that are fearful, because all over the world, every single news network is going to have their camera, their video feed showing the burning of the red heifers. And you're going to see part of that during the day, and you're going to see part of it during the night. And there's going to be a large part of the population in the world that's fearful, because deep down inside, their soul knows that it's going to get judged because of those ashes. And there's another group of people that are going to say, I'm not fearful because I'm ready. I can take this. I can, some people are going to say, I'm going to be able to harness this and be a better person and be part of something new and more peaceful, more pure. The United States is too afraid to do the right thing. Instead, they want to look for expediency. They want a pragmatic solution. And they're not paying attention. They're not paying attention to the event, the big event that's happening.
Last week to come up with an alternative plan, one that is not what the Israelis have been planning, such as a large-scale ground operation into Rafah that could endanger the over 1 million Palestinians that have sought shelter there over the last few months. And what the Israelis are saying is that, look, we need a way to eliminate these remaining Hamas battalions. And the U.S. is responding, well, you could go after them with a more targeted approach, something that targets more senior figures in Hamas rather than going in and doing an all-out assault. And so I think what the U.S. is still with.
If Israel follows the U.S. strategy, this is kicking the can down the road. And this is not the first time Israel stopped being aggressive because the United States said stop. And each time that this has happened, it only got worse down the road. It's time to get the job done. America, if you keep on doing this, you're gonna get cursed. Now, I said in a previous video, the soul root of America is not fully aligned with Jacob. It's mostly aligned with Jacob. Mostly. So you're going to get a big benefit of the blessing if you just get the job done. But if you're going to look for expediency, if you're going to look for a Westphalian way out of this, you're going to get cursed because the soul root isn't fully aligned. I just look at these people and I'm just amazed at how stupid they are. I'm just, I don't know. Maybe I'm from a different planet. I don't know. But these people are fucking idiots.
To see from the Israelis is a concrete plan to move those civilians out of the area. And that is something that Israel has not been able to provide them with yet. And until they do, until they provide some kind of blueprint for how they're going to get those people out of that area, perhaps allowing them to move back north, then the U.S. is really not going to be on board with this. Now, among the proposals the U.S. has given to the Israelis is to ramp up.
Listen, honey, if you give Hamas time to have the Gazans move in a safer area, don't you think Hamas will move with them? So it's no longer as active of a target, Rafah being as active a target. It's time to kill them. Hamas embedded themselves in the population, and it's time to root out the cancer. There is no good way out of this, honey.
Talks with the Egyptians to try to seal that border so that Israel can conduct these more precision operations targeting these senior Hamas leaders without the possibility that they're just going to then escape, of course, across the border into Egypt. Of course, another aspect of this is that really targeted operation that the U.S. says that the Israelis should try, and that's something that they have been pushing them to do for months and months, instead of doing these large-scale operations that really do endanger the civilians there. But the Israelis are going to do what they're going to do, and that is the message that we got last week in talks with Israeli officials, is that they are going to do what they believe is best for eliminating the remaining Hamas battalions in that area. Now, whether there are any consequences for the Israelis ignoring the Americans' advice, that remains to be seen, because we have seen that the U.S. has continued to provide them with weapons, with intelligence to help them prosecute this war against Hamas. And so the question now is, are there any red lines here? If the Israelis do move forward with this operation in Rafah, how is the U.S. going to respond, especially if it's in a way that the U.S. has explicitly advised against? Delaney.
All right, Natasha Bertrand, great to have you on. Thank you.
IRS e-file is open. Snap your W.
Okay. Now, Times Radio.
Today, we see the strike in Damascus. So this is one of the most significant moments, in my opinion, in the north, where this conflict has been taking shape between Hezbollah and Israel, and a bit of a shadow war between Israel and Iran taking place inside Syria. I think what gets lost is that this is not new. We've seen the IRGC come under fire many times inside Syria. By my count, there's been more than 5 strikes that have killed IRGC members inside Damascus, but no one as senior as Mohammad Reza Zahedi, the top general in the Quds forces.
The Iranian consulate in Syria has been hit by what Syrian state media is describing as an Israeli airstrike. The IDF says it does not comment on foreign media reports. Tehran's ambassador to Damascus has said that the Iranian response to the strike will be harsh. Earlier, I spoke to Frank Lowenstein, former U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East.
I think everybody should be quite concerned. According to media reports, there was also a senior IRGC general who was killed in that strike. So this will be viewed by the Iranians as a very provocative step by the Israelis. And if you look at it against the backdrop of the political problems that Netanyahu has, massive street protests, obviously the Haredim conscription law is up, so he has problems with his coalition. And he's got big problems with the United States, especially with respect to Rafah. So it's sort of a perfect storm of political problems for the prime minister. And if he's seeking to escalate his way out of this, then we could really be in a difficult situation.
It's Frank Lowenstein. Well, Iranian state media has reported that a senior Revolutionary Guards commander, Mohammad Reza Zahedi, is among the dead. Zach Anders is a reporter covering the Middle East. Zach, hello.
Hello, Henry.
Can you bring us up to date? What's the latest?
Well, I'll set the stage for you what's happening in Israel today. The CIA director from the United States, David Barnett, is in Israel helping with the negotiations. The Prime Minister Netanyahu, is still in the hospital from his hernia surgery last night. He's expected to be released tomorrow. And Israel, in its southern port of Eilat, came under fire from Iraq today. So it was already a very busy day. A few days ago, 3 days ago, the Defense Minister Gallant on last Friday, said that Israel is turning from defending to pursuing Hezbollah. We're going to reach wherever the organization operates in Beirut, Damascus, and in more different places. Today, we see the strike in Damascus. So this is one of the most significant moments, in my opinion, in the north, where this conflict has been taking shape between Hezbollah and Israel, and a bit of a shadow war between Israel and Iran taking place inside Syria. I think what gets lost is that this is not new. We've seen the IRGC come under fire many times inside Syria. By my count, there's been more than 5 strikes that have killed IRGC members inside Damascus, but no one as senior as Mohammad Reza Zahedi, the top general in the Quds forces.
Zach, what then are the implications of such a strike? What could happen?
Well, it gives notes of what we saw when in 2020 the U.S. Killed Qasem Soleimani, at the time the leader of the Quds forces. And Iran came with not just a flurry of statements, but they fired upon U.S. bases and injured U.S. soldiers in large-scale aerial attacks. I'm here on the northern border with Israel and Lebanon. We have not seen any increase in attacks. There's already been so far 3 attacks today from southern Lebanon targeting northern Israel. Iran and its proxies in Hezbollah and the Houthis in Yemen are most likely to be deployed in these cases. I would think that not only will we see a pickup or an increase of attacks from Hezbollah, but we could also see attacks against U.S. Forces in the region as well. That's something that is similar to things we've seen in the past when Iran feels that they're threatened. They don't just go after Israel, they also go after the U.S. and then blame the U.S. for Israeli actions.
Okay, Zach Anders, covering the Middle East. Thank you, man.
All right, before we go to the car crash, hold on.
Go ahead, skip a garbage day. This smart kitchen bin takes weeks and weeks to fill up, and it never smells. Meat mill, an odorless after.
All right, we're following breaking news out of Atlanta.
I'm going to do a commercial because this is PNN, and I have lots of products on my store that help with your health and get your body in homeostasis. I've talked a lot about how to improve your immune system and how to slow down the aging process. I have partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we've produced these deodorant bars. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. These deodorants are made from essential oils from the Himalayas, extremely high quality. All right, it's going to be a very high quality deodorant bar that you never had before. It has no aluminum in it, doesn't have baking soda in it. So what it does have is really high quality essential oils. All right, you use it every day as a deodorant, but because of the high quality and the types of ingredients that are in it, what you'll notice is that it'll help with the detoxification of your body. Okay, so there's dual purpose. Please go to the store. It's for males and females, and get a couple bars for your household. In addition, there are many people that are having problems sleeping. Now, part of it's because of stress at work, or maybe listening to DrPaulCottrell, and it keeps you up at night because we're talking about nuclear war or, Armageddon in the Middle East. But it's really important for you to get REM sleep. You need 3 cycles of REM sleep usually a night, okay? 2 to 3 cycles of REM sleep a night. If you get REM sleep, you get the proper sleep, you'll have better memory, consolidation of memory, and you'll be able to detoxify your body. Now, by detoxifying your body, you are going to get rid of toxins, and you're not going to be inflamed and cause early aging, early problems with your body. So for people that are having problems sleeping, please go to my store and get the Good Night formula. It has tryptophan and melatonin in it. Take it every day so you can get the proper sleep if you're not sleeping well. All right? So please go to the store and get the Good Night formula and get that proper sleep. It has been found that people that have chronic sleep issues and they're not going into REM sleep, that you are increasing your chances of dementia because of lack of detoxification of the central nervous system. Please go to my store also and get the vitamin D3. It is great as a cofactor for gene expression It also helps with absorbing calcium. It helps with apoptosis of infected cells. So D3, I take it twice a day. Each gel, soft gel, is 5,000 units. So you know I'm taking 10,000 units a day. So and I have explained that you can take higher doses if you're trying to solve some sort of osteoarthritis issue. I'll probably do another video to explain that in more detail. Vitamin C, really important for the immune system. Take it every day. If you're sick, take a double dose of it. Drink it with filtered water. If you take this every day and you add collagen and you drink the filtered water, you're going to actually notice that you have better cross-linking with the collagen, and you'll have a better dermal layer for your skin. And you won't get scurvy. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get lignans. All right, this is a powder. You take it every day, and it helps to boost up your immune system. This is for males and females. It'll also help with your hormonal balance. I have structural nanosilver soaps. I have them in different varieties. This one's peppermint. This one is oatmeal. And this one's lavender. I have 5 different versions on my store. So please go to the store and get the structural nanosilver soaps. Very high quality soaps that will neutralize pathogens. Get a couple bars or a few bars for your family. And I also have C60. I have it in 2 ounce, 4 ounce, and an 8 ounce configuration. You can get it in coconut or avocado oil. C60 is a molecule. It's 60 carbons. It's a very strong antioxidant. This is a very high quality product that will soak up those free radicals, neutralize them, so your cell isn't stressed. During the aging process, there's a buildup of free radicals. All right. As we get older, we have more free radicals. So it's important to take this. There's a compounding effect. If you take it on a regular basis, you are soaking up these free radicals and you're allowing for your cells to heal, allowing the cells to perform better. In addition, the mitochondria that's in the cell, your major energy source that makes ATP, will improve by increasing your energy. You're going to be able to move around more. You'll have more muscle mass. You will have more energy to do things. If you're improving the mitochondria in your neurons, you're going to be able to think better. So you'll have better mental acuity. So please go to the store and use this every day. If you get the 2 ounce, use a dropper of it a day. If you get the 4 or 8 ounce, you take a teaspoon of it a day. I take a teaspoon of it a day, every day, and you know what you will notice when you do that is that your body's healing, you're having more energy. You take it on an empty stomach. It's the best absorption, and over time, you're going to start noticing that you are slowing down the aging process. In addition, for ones that work out, if you take it before your workout, you will actually recover quicker. The reason being, when you're working out, you're creating free radicals, and you have this in your system before you're working out, and it soaks them up. In addition, when you have free radicals, it creates this inflammation. So by being able to soak them up, you're bringing down that inflammation. And that's why I said that the core of the anti-aging protocol is that will help to boost up your immune system is neutralize pathogens with structural nanosilver liquids, bring down the inflammation by taking the turmeric and the ashwagandha, and then you take the C60 every day, a teaspoon of it or a full dropper every day, and that will soak up the free radicals, and your body is going to start. Your body is going to be less inflamed. It's going to neutralize those pathogens, and your immune system is going to get better.
Individual had rammed a vehicle into the gate of the field office of the FBI there in an attempt to gain entry this afternoon. We know at this point that bomb technicians have cleared the vehicle that rammed that gate, and the suspect is in police custody with the DeKalb County Police. Let's get now to Evan Perez for the very latest on what we know. We can see in these pictures coming to us, we see a vehicle that has gone through the gate, stopped obviously by that sort of security plate or the gate that comes down. But tell us what you know, Evan.
Well, Brianna, at this point, this person is now in custody of the police, but he's also being evaluated at the hospital. At the hospital there, I think Ryan Young said it's in DeKalb County. And so that's the expectation now there. That evaluation is going to take some time. It will include a mental health evaluation. Again, there's a lot that is unexplained about this incident at this point. This person drove up to that what is an employee entrance for that complex where the FBI building is, or where the FBI field office is located, and tried to gain entry. They came out of the vehicle and tried to walk in to the complex. They were stopped by the FBI security people who help screen visitors to that complex. And so that's where this ended. At this point, again, from what we know, the person didn't make any statements, any threats. There was no expectation of a heightened threat at this FBI building. So it was certainly something of a surprise. And so what's going to happen next is, obviously he's being evaluated not only for any potential injuries, but also for potential mental health issues, because this is so unexplained at this point. As Ryan Young pointed out, there were no weapons found immediately, and the vehicle has been cleared. There's no bombs. So those are the first and immediate concerns when you have something like this. Those are the first and immediate concerns that the security folks, the FBI, tries to make sure is made clear. And so now the work continues to try to figure out what happened here, what prompted this person to go to this entrance and ram that vehicle into that barrier, the entry to the FBI field office just outside of Atlanta. Morris and Brianna.
Evan, please stand by. We want to bring in Josh Campbell. He's a CNN security correspondent, also a former FBI supervisory special agent. Josh, first, talk to us about the security measures that.
Before we go to Josh, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the applicators that I have for the structural nano silver liquid. You put the liquid in you get a spray bottle. There is a dropper or a nasal spray. So you just put the liquid in these bottles, and you apply it accordingly. So go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description, and use these, to be able to put the liquid into one of these applicators, and then you can carry it around in your bag. It's easy to transport instead of this big bottle, especially if you're taking it to work or whatever, and you need to spray something at your desk or whatever.
Place around these kinds of buildings, and obviously the protocol that goes into place when something like this happens, it worked in this case, apparently, as it was designed to.
Yeah, this is an effective security system, as you can see from the front of that Buick SUV. They're smashed into what's called the final denial barrier. There are layered security approaches to these federal buildings. You obviously have the iron gates, and then that system that's in place there to prevent what this person allegedly attempted to do, and that is to make entry into that building. What we've seen over the last couple of years, we've talked about these threats that have manifested against FBI employees. We know that the FBI stood up its own individual cell unit just to track threats against FBI personnel. So it's something that they certainly have been taking seriously. We know in August of 2022, there was an individual who attempted to breach the FBI field office there in Ohio. That then led to a standoff. That person was eventually killed. And so we know that the FBI Security Division, which is based at FBI headquarters, but has personnel staged across the country, have been focused very heavily on security. We've also seen over the last couple of decades decades, a move to get FBI field offices out of downtown areas and in more to a standalone type facility. And security obviously is paramount there. You want to have what's called standoff, where you're not on a busy roadway, where you can put these security processes that are in place. Then you go back to 1995, the Alpha P federal.
Doesn't it seem odd that if you're having mental issues that you're going to be driving a Buick? Probably mental issues you'd be driving, I don't know, a Honda. I don't know. A Kia or something.
Bombing in Oklahoma City, that was really a wake-up call for the federal government about how to protect these facilities. And certain field offices, to include there at FBI Atlanta, you have security personnel that work around the clock, but you can't also overlook the fact that we're talking about a building that houses federal agents. And so they obviously would respond very quickly. We see some of the FBI SWAT vehicles that were pulled up along the scene there to just ensure that this person didn't make further entry. We know that that person obviously now in custody. And then we move to the investigation, determine who this individual was. It appears from our affiliate coverage, it looks like that Buick has South Carolina plate. So unclear if this vehicle belonged to the individual, whether this was a rental car. And so there's that investigative process that's now in place to fully identify this person and then try to get to that motive. Was this some type of mental health episode? Was this someone who was specifically targeting personnel at that FBI facility? We don't yet know. We're obviously waiting for authorities to provide that type of information, but clearly a very serious incident that has happened here. And it's something, I talk to FBI employees all the time, specifically over the last couple of years, really concerned about their own security. I talked to one agent who talked about, taking further precautions, even driving to work, doing a couple extra laps around the building just to put eyes on, to make sure that there aren't suspicious people that are in and around these buildings. So for people who work at this federal law enforcement agency, it's certainly a very sensitive time. Again, we don't know the motive, what happened right here yet, but just looking at those images, you can just see how this could have been very, very dangerous if there were any personnel that were in and around that building, guys.
Yeah, there's always questions, and we don't know the answers in this particular case, Josh. Is it a mental health episode? Is it ideology of some sort? Is it a combination of the two? But when these things happen, we have those questions because of what you mentioned with Cincinnati, and just because of how much the FBI has become politicized, both in the wake of the Mar-a-Lago search, in the wake of the Hillary Clinton email server investigation. You had congressional testimony.
What about the suspicious death of Tesla?
Last year from some in the FBI or formerly of the FBI who'd had their security clearances revoked after they had either attended January 6th or had trafficked in conspiracy theories about it. And all of that, I wonder from your
What about the FBI going after Oppenheimer?
perspective, has that put the FBI really kind of on the map for a lot of people in a way that it wasn't before?
No, most certainly. I mean, particularly when we talk about a lot of the conspiracy theories about the FBI over the last several years. I mean, that is something that obviously is a very concern to personnel. I'll say at the outset, obviously, that if this isn't.
Not every person at the FBI is bad. But you have, going all the way back to Hoover, the FBI has been nothing but an agency to have command and control over politicians and over large sections of society. They didn't like MLK when he was, protesting about civil rights. And they went after him. They went after Malcolm X. They went after many people. This problem with the FBI goes all the way back to its inception. Out of control national security state. So let's call it for what it really is.
a mental health incident, obviously the vast majority of people who struggle with mental health don't turn out to be violent. So it's important to note that. But, you know, when you have people that are on the receiving end, specifically online, social media, all of this vitriol, all of these conspiracy theories. I mean, you look at that individual back in 2022 in Cincinnati, this is someone who this followed.
What happens when you have FBI and CIA heads lying to Congress about surveillance of citizens? And Congress didn't do anything about it. National security state needs to be truncated. Now, I'm pretty sure that JFK had problems with the FBI too. He obviously had problems with the CIA when it came to the Bay of Pigs. I'll tell you, just these agencies, they're out of control. They're out of control. And so to think that there's not going to be people that are upset because of them being out of control is not really paying attention to the real problem. The real problem isn't this person running the barrier. Most likely, we don't know if he was an employee that was upset that he got fired. We don't know anything about this guy. We don't even know if this is a setup. We don't know. We don't know anything except that he drives a Buick. All right. But it is known that the FBI and the CIA and other agencies have been doing nefarious things in contemporary time, but also all the way in its inception. It was doing nefarious things against the American citizen. And they need to be held accountable. They're out of control. They're out of control. They do entrapment. And they try to spin it like you're the evil one.
FBI's search at Mar-a-Lago at the residence, that person was essentially arming for some type of, you know, quote, revolution, law enforcement sources have told us at the time. And so you can just see how when you have people that are out there consuming that type of information, and then they might be prone to actually act upon that with violence, that is something that law enforcement and indeed, you know, federal and state and local security facilities across the country are having to guard against.
What about mind control by the intelligence agencies and LSD program?
It's also worth noting, you know, we've, Evan and I had reported about a DHS bulletin not long ago that came out, the Department of Homeland Security, that was warning state, federal, local law enforcement around the country to be on guard for potential political violence. They listed a number of different reasons why that could be the case, everything from action taking place around legislatures around the country, actions in the courts. You know, they didn't specifically mention former President Donald Trump and his legal woes, but that was essentially signaling that, you know, you have people that because of what's happening there in that court system that might be, you know, might decide to act with violence, and then a host of other different reasons, and that spans the political spectrum. You know, people who might be prone to act with violence, and so if you're a law enforcement agency, that is something that you're having to guard against. I'll state again, because I know, you know, the people on social media who, you know, try to connect dots here. We don't know that this has anything to do with, you know, any type of political incident. We don't know yet that this was a mental health episode. Quite frankly, for FBI personnel on the scene, that's a second factor for them. The first is to obviously render safe that vehicle, which we know has happened, to bring in the bomb technicians to make sure that aren't any type of explosives or weapons. But the investigation itself is going to be very important. One thing that you know, I will question, and obviously we have a lot of questions, is as authorities go back and look at the CCTV footage that blankets these FBI facilities, they'll be looking for, was this someone who had come to this location before? Were they trying to surveil, do some type of reconnaissance? It's interesting to me that that first level barrier that you see, that iron fencing there, appears to be open. The person didn't crash into that. The person crashed into that final denial barrier, which receives into the ground. And so was this someone who was waiting as an employee was entering to then try to piggyback and come in behind that individual, or was this a gate that was just left open, which would obviously raise security issues? So a lot of questions that go into why this person was there, what the person was doing in the moments leading up to that. And then in this day and age, so many people are on social media, so once they fully identify this person, they'll want to try to determine whether there was any indication that this was about to happen. Again, to get to that motive, why the person decided that they wanted to do this. Final point I'll make is that the FBI, unlike other facilities such as the Department of Defense, such as the Central Intelligence Agency, they have to walk a fine line between being a secure facility, but also a facility where members of the public can come in. When I was an FBI agent, all FBI agents have to sit what's called the duty agent. That happens a number of times a year, depending on the size of the field office. And that is people that come in that want to report some type of crime, or that they've been a victim. So while there is security, there also has to be some type of welcoming approach. That is something that they're
so welcoming that you have someone trying to inform the FBI about the Hunter Biden laptop, and they didn't do a fucking thing about it. Yeah, and the FBI is all lily white.
trying to calibrate how to ensure that bad actors don't make their way in.
This is very specifically for men over 30 years old who make at least 150 grand annually. And then next.
All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lozenges and drops. We're in the spring season, so there's going to be pollen in the air. There's going to be irritation. Some people may even have a type 1 hypersensitivity where, they're going to get some allergy reaction. So the best thing to do is stock up for your household. Get the drops. I have it in blueberry and honey and lemon in 100 count. The drops are smaller. I also have lozenges in elderberry zinc, which is a popular item, in a 21 count. Those are a little bit bigger than the lozenges. And then I also have Manuka honey in a 21 count. So please go to the store, get the drops and the lozenges. They have a great taste, but better yet, it helps to neutralize pathogens and soothe that throat, and get those secretions going, so you can kind of mitigate your reaction when you are out there and you're being exposed to some of these antigens. Go to the store. I have lots of great products to help to improve your health, boost up your immune system, slow down the aging process. And I also have ebooks, so you can learn about some stuff on finance. Some of them is scholarly work. Some of it is a little bit more, about artificial intelligence. So I have many topics. I also talk about genomics, but I also have lectures on immunology and pulmonology that you can purchase for $50. And if you purchase the pulmonology module, you get 22 lectures. Only for $50. You get PDFs and videos. And right now there is a pre-sale for immunology on my store, where you'll get access when they're published very shortly here. 16 lectures, PDF files, and videos about immunology. You'll learn a lot about the human body and how it works. So please, it's only $50, and you'll learn a lot for each one of these modules. So there are many ways to learn about the human body, improve your health, and learn about some other things that I talk about, like finance and medicine, my perspective on where things are going in a new age, you know, when it comes to artificial intelligence. Now, I wrote that book before this whole red heifer thing, so you know, it's going to be interesting how this all plays out. But thank you for listening. I'll be doing a show shortly with another channel, and I'll be publishing that. We're going to be doing a recording tomorrow. Thank you for listening, and have a nice night. And oh, by the way, the red heifers most likely are going to be burned this year.